We have Tim Gaiser, Master Sommelier from New Mexico. Today we're talking about Kit 176A. Hey, Tim, how's it going?
Goodly Meng, greetings, Ola from New Mexico. Welcome to today's session. A continuation of the session from last time that talked about white wine conclusions. So today's session is on red wine conclusions. We've got a flight of 6 red wines, and we're going to put a method behind the madness of making conclusions. And the strategy is very similar for making conclusions with white wines. I'm going to use a series of 4 questions, the same 4 questions with each of these 6 red wines. 4 questions form kind of like a decision tree. And what it does is help you narrow down the possibilities for the grape variety in the place. Question number 1 is you take a look at the wine, and specifically you're looking at how deeply colored, or maybe it's not so deeply colored. And you're asking yourself, was the wine made from a thinner or a thicker skinned grape? The idea behind this is that colored red wines comes from the pigmentation in the compounds in the grape skins. You have wines made from thinner skinned grapes that are lighter in color. And conversely, you have wines made from thicker skinned grapes that are deeper in color. Not every wine's going to ascribe to those two camps. You may have a wine that's neither light colored or deep colored, but at least this gives you a starting point. Lighter colored, thinner skinned grapes and wines. Examples would be Pinot Noir, Gamay, Tempranillo, Grenache, Sangiovese, and Nebbiolo. And then, on the other hand, deeper color, thicker skinned grapes wines would be Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Syrah. So notice all the grapes in the Cabernet Sauvignon family. Okay, and then here's some further thoughts, because as you consider those 2 possibilities, I want you to think about connecting the dots in the appearance of a wine and using cause and effect. And how does the color of the wine, what kind of expectations might it set up? I do this. As soon as I look at a red wine and I look at the color, I have expectations about the wine, its characteristics, its fruit, its structure. And with a lighter colored red wine, I'm thinking, yeah, could be a thinner skinned grape, in which case it's probably the grapes were grown in a cooler place. It's going to be red fruit dominant. It's going to have a tart fruit character. There's going to be more savory, non-fruit type things. There's going to be less alcohol because the grapes didn't get very ripe. And that means there's going to be higher natural acidity. And there's probably going to be moderate tannin. There's exceptions, but I think those things hold true. As opposed to a wine with a much deeper color, made from a thicker skinned grape, grown in a warmer climate, that's going to be dark fruit dominant. It's going to be riper fruit. And then there are less savory notes because it's really going to be fruit dominant. Odds are it's going to be pretty oaky too. But you're going to have less savory notes, secondary non-fruit type notes, and higher alcohol, less natural acidity. Odds are it's going to be more tannin. So those are kind of the 2 extremes, but that's all cause and effect, just working off the color. One final thought about the appearance of the wine and color evolution. If the wine is a youthful ruby red or it's a purple color, it means youth. If the wine is garnet or reddish brown in color, odds are it's got some age on it, or at the very least, it was in oak for an extended period of time, which means it's going to be older. So consider those 2 possibilities. Also consider the fact that you could have a wine somewhere in between that's evolving. It's going to have feet in both worlds, where it's going to have some youthful fruit, some dried, and some oak aging. And so it's going to be various stages of evolution, but keep that in mind. Now, the second question, the next slide. Does the wine have obvious earth and mineral? Yeah. And if it does, it's probably from Europe, the old world. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, old world wines are earthier. If the wine is fruit dominant and has oak, odds are it's from a new world place, like the US, Australia, New Zealand, could be Chile, Argentina, etc. Question number 3, and the most important one, are there any impact compounds in the wine that can help me identify the grape variety? Here's a short list of them. Carbonic maceration, which you would find in Beaujolais Village and other wines, but especially Beaujolais and Beaujolais Village. And then stem inclusion, because if you're using whole clusters of grapes, you got stems. And so there's going to be a green stemmy quality to the palate. And that is not to say you could have wines that are done using whole cluster fermentation, at least for one of these wines in the flight. And there's some stem tannin there too. But just to make a distinction, there is a difference between carbonic and whole cluster. Carbonic really means is that you're doing the fermentation in a sealed tank. It's an anaerobic without oxygen fermentation, and it has very special qualities to the nose and the palate, as opposed to just fermenting whole clusters of red grapes. Okay, it's funny because you do both to extract color and fruit out of the grapes, but not tannin. What's next? Cabernet family wines. Wines from Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc Merlot, the green bell pepper, asparagus, grass, green herb type notes. That's all pyrazines. And then Rotondone, which is pepper, black pepper, white pepper, and it's from grapes like Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, but it's also in Zinfandel, and it's in other grapes too. And then there's one more slide of impact compounds, and then we'll get to tasting. Terpenes is floral. You'd be surprised that most red wines have some kind of floral characteristics. Cabernet family grapes, to me, always smell like roses and violets. Italian varieties smells like roses. Rhone varieties smell like lavender and potpourri, and sometimes green, which is a mix of Provençal herbs. Totally changing camps, Brettanomyces. So the next two, some people consider a fault, Brettanomyces and volatile acidity V8. So Brettanomyces, it is yeast, and it lives in vineyard soil. It gets on the plant material, it gets on the grapes, gets into the winery environment, and in low levels, it gives a red wine earthy and leathery type complexity. However, it can really take over the character of the wine and make it one-dimensional and make it just like a barnyard, a very 4-H experience. So volatile acidity is V8, smells like vinegar. It's a byproduct of fermentation, and technically it's in every wine in trace amounts. But if you can smell it, detect it, in some cases it's considered a traditional winemaking. I have Rioja, Gran Reserva, Amarone, others, yeah. And so if you smell VA in a wine, yeah, it could be an important impact compound. And finally, American oak. Traditional Rioja uses American oak. I want you to make that easy. I don't want you to obsess about where did the oak come from. The important thing for most of us is just to recognize there's oak on a wine, recognize oak markers that you smell them, you taste them. Once you get beyond that, you can detect where the oak is from. In the case of American oak, it's pretty easy. American oak smells like bourbon, period, because you have to age bourbon in charred, burnt American oak barrels for, I think it's at least 18 months, right? American oak smells like bourbon. If you smell red wine that smells like bourbon, probably American oak. Certain wines like traditional Rioja Reserva, Gran Reserva are done in American oak. More and more wines are done in French oak, and more than a few producers use both. Certain old school California and Australian wines use American oak. BV George de la Tour, for example. Final question, is there anything about the wine structure I need to pay attention to? The answer is always yeah. You need to pay attention to the structure. Start with alcohol level. Is the alcohol high? In which case it's from a warmer region. California, Washington State, Australia, Southern Italy, Southern Rhone. This wine's got high alcohol. Does it have earth and mineral, which is going to take me to one place versus everywhere else? Or is it a lower alcohol wine from a cooler climate region, in which case it's going to have tartar fruit? And there are some places like the Loire Valley, Germany, Austria, Oregon, and New Zealand. And again, noting if there's earth and mineral in the wine. So it's like a series of filters you're putting wine through. Next up, after looking at the alcohol level, you would consider the acidity. So lower acid wines means higher alcohol from warm climate regions. If that's the case, you're looking for acidulation. I've mentioned that several times. Acidulation to me has the texture and the taste of aspirin. So if you acidulate at the time of bottling, you're left with kind of like a baby aspirin taste, especially in the roof of your mouth. If you come across high alcohol wines and the acid is elevated, you have to suspect, unless it's a grape variety, that will give you high alcohol and ripeness and high acid. And there are a few, but usually the wine's going to be acidulated. And then finally, confirming higher natural acidity in wines from cooler climate places, just like the list in the previous slide. With that, that's a lot to work with, but we're going to go through and repeat all those things. Finally, I'll talk about the tannins. Lower tannin wines like Gamay and Pinot Noir. Higher tannin wines like Cabernet Sauvignon, Sangiovese, and Nebbiolo. Last point on there, and I'll make it at least for one wine. And you make the point of tannins and oak tannins and where they are in your mouth. and what that should lead you to. And now I think we're ready to get started.
Where the rubber meets the road, right? I'm going to fire the first question so that folks who are not familiar with the term acidulation, why do winemakers acidulate?
That's a good question. For wine to be balanced, there has to be enough acidity. If you have a wine with not enough acidity, it's not a stable environment in the bottle, and the wine's going to oxidize more quickly. It's not going to taste good. It's going to fall apart. As grapes get riper, they lose tartaric acid. If you've got really ripe grapes, you don't have enough tartaric acid, and you're going to have grape juice without enough tartaric acid, and that's where you would start to acidulate. The acid we're talking about is powdered tartaric acid taken from grapes. So it's not some foreign substance introduced into the wine. Most people, if they're going to acidulate, they do it at the crush pad or while the wine is fermenting. If you still need to acidulate, you could do it right before bottling, but that's when you can really taste it. Okay?
Thank you.
So let's go on to wine number 1. And here are the 4 questions. What color is the wine? What's the depth of color in the wine? Next question, does the wine have new oak? Third question, does the wine have obvious earth and mineral or not? And finally, are there any impact compounds that can help me identify the wine? So let's take a look at it first. All right, I can tell you just by looking at the wine, if I tilt the glass away from me at a 45-degree angles, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, the wine has quite a bit of garnet in it. That's the first thing. I'm thinking either age or extended time in oak. There's a lot of rim variation, so there's a lot of gradations in color heading out to the very edge. That's also a sign of age. And did everybody smell the wine? Aha. And my suspicions have been confirmed. So if I had to describe this wine in one word, it would be vinous. V-I-N-O-U-S. And vinosity is a term that means it's the qualities of a red wine with age. I don't want to give it away too quickly, but there's something really strong on the nose. But let's go through it with a grid. The first is the fruit. The fruit is a mix of red and dark, more red than dark. Sour cherry, red plum, maybe a little cranberry. Everything here is ripe, but it's dried. The dry part connects to what the wine looks like in terms of the color. The same goes for the darker fruit too, plum bordering on prune, dark black cherry. And again, these are dried and they're ripe. With the red fruit, there's also a little bit of tartness too. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to get that on the palate. Beyond that, there's quite a bit of non-fruit. As you smell the wine, you can pull your nose out of the glass a little bit, and it smells like potpourri and dried roses, dried rose petals. I'm describing it as dried. So you're not going to have a wine with advanced color and say, oh, this smells like fresh loganberries. It's not going to happen. If the wine has advanced colors, everything's going to be dried. There's dried floral, there's dried herbs. It's like bergamot tea. There's mushrooms, there's like dried anise. It's like bay laurel, and it's dried. So dried herbs. And then the earth is dusty. It's like terracotta, sun on terracotta that's sun-baked, and then it's chalk dust. And there's a little bit of leather here. Getting to the main event, there's a lot of oak influence on this wine. I would just say it's just like a mix of old and new oak, but it's really quite predominantly spicy. There's vanilla, there's a little dill, there's sandalwood, there's allspice. And again, there's a lot about the wine that's just oxidized. And the oxidized, in this case, is age. Not only that, when you were smelling for floral, one of the first things that hit me is VA. So there's some volatile acidity. It smells like balsamic vinegar. So it's this whole package of a wine that's been in oak for a long time, several years at least, and it's earthy and quite complex. I'm going to go ahead and taste it. Wow. Okay. My suspicions about more red fruit in the palate are true. It really tartans up. It's like craisins, dried cranberries that are tannic and sour, the dried sour cherries. Even the black fruit was like black raspberry and blackberry that is tart, but it's dry. All the fruit is dry. It's more herbal on the palate, dried herbs. It's like black tea. You can taste the potpourri. It's resiny. It's earthy and chalky, like chalk dust. And then the oak, the finish is all about the oak. There's a surprising amount of spice. It's leather, like dried cocoa powder, and dried herbs. It's like dill and sandalwood. The structure real quick is the acid's medium plus, the tannins are medium plus, the alcohol's just barely medium plus, high complexity, long finish. This is good wine. Okay, so Lee Bang just put up the poll. Your choices are Tempranillo blend, Sangiovese blend, and Merlot blend. And the countries you could be are in Spain, Italy, Australia, or California. If you think it's not of any of the first three, go ahead and vote other. Remember, this is anonymous, so just go for it. There's a line in the first Zootopia movie, the Shakira song, where she says, "Nobody learns without getting it wrong." And that describes tasting. Okay, so vote. And then I'll talk about my conclusion and how I took those questions and what I did with them there. Okay, Li Bing, what do you think?
Folks are coming in. I think for a first wine, that's very good participation. We're in the 70s already. This wine is delicious.
Yeah.
I love starting with it. I think starting with a little bit of age is a great way to go. Talk a lot about progression and tasting. This was
Yeah.
definitely a good way to start it. I'm going to release the poll. We are at 67% on Tempranillo, 25% on Sangiovese, 4% on Merlot. If you picked other, those of you who picked other could let us know what you picked or what you thought it was. We'd love to
Yes.
hear it. We have 65% on Spain, 35% on Italy. Nobody is outside of Europe.
Okay, that's good because the wine is earthy. So should we reveal or get on the Learjet and go somewhere?
I think you can talk a little bit more about varieties and then we'll
Yeah.
reveal
Okay.
region. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tempranillo, thinner skinned, a wine that shows predominantly red fruit, medium plus acidity. It's not very tannic. And then medium plus alcohol. It rarely gets very high in the alcohol department, but it's also quite earthy. And more often than not, traditional Rioja that's aged in American oak, right? And Sangiovese, to me, higher acid and more tannin, especially grape tannin. Okay. Jerry is saying the VA brought you to Nebbiolo when you didn't see it as a choice. You wanted about Sangiovese. Jerry, we're about to find out. We're going to get on Li Meng's Learjet and go on an overnight flight. We're going to go to a place where they eat dinner late, where you don't even think about eating dinner till 9 or 10 at night. And I've seen in cafes families with babies and they're still eating and drinking at midnight. The kids passed out in the stroller and they're having a great time. All right, so we are in Rioja. This is traditional Rioja, a 2018 Baronia Reserva. And Bodegas Baronia, in the context of Rioja producers, they haven't been around that long, only just over 50 years. Founded in 1973 by a group of friends from the Basque Country in northern Spain. They own vineyards and buy quality fruit from old vines from a lot of their neighbors. Totally old school Rioja American oak. When I first tasted this wine a couple hours ago, the first thing that came to me, it smelled like bourbon spilled on a picnic table, right? Bourbon spilled on old redwood, a lot of bottle age and barrel age. VA extended aging Rioja, you're exactly right. Says you're in Spain, if you're eating at 8 p.m., you'll only be dining with other Americans. I think this is textbook old school Rioja. It's funny because we used the Gran Reserva in a tasting workshop in Denver on Wednesday, and it was even more oxidative and lighter in color. That's really quite good.
But Tim, to back up a little bit, because Jerry said that there was VA, and there's obviously VA here. So VA is not an indicator that it has to be a Nebbiolo or it has to be a Sangiovese. All three grapes have instances of having VA.
Lots of wines, Jerry, have VA, and VA is not a product of the grape itself, but it's usually fermentation or it's extended oak aging. My questions were thinner, thick skin grape. This was somewhere in the middle. The wine has extreme oak aging. It dominates the wine. Beyond that, impact compounds would be the VA and American oak. Finally, the structure, nothing's out of line. It's a medium plus wine, meaning it's from a temperate climate. But for me, the American oak, red fruit, dried red fruit dominant, and the VA, that takes me to Rioja. And there's Alejandro Lopez. He's the winemaker, very talented. I'm a big fan of the Baronia wines. They're great values and totally spot on for the traditional wines. We promise to keep all of you entertained with this flight of wines. So wine number 2, I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. The wine is translucent. I can see through it. So it's a thinner skin grape for sure. I'm going to call it medium ruby, and it fades out to a lighter ruby with a little bit of salmon in the rim. So there's a little bit of evolution. And then I'm going to smell it. Does the wine have new oak? Not really. We're going to check out the earth and the impact compounds. Let's go through the whole thing. I'm going to say on the nose, starting with the fruit, it's predominantly red. You've got a lighter red wine. It's going to be red fruit dominant, higher acid, less alcohol, more savory, more non-fruit things. Okay, so starting with the fruit, this smells like sour red cherries, cranberries, red raspberries, and maybe some rhubarb. Yeah, so it's sour and red, and it's fresh and tart. Is there dark fruit? Not so much. I'm going to say it's maybe a little black raspberry, something that's acidic, but it's predominantly red. Okay? It is floral. I get rose petals. I also get anise. I get sandalwood. I get herbs. I get tomato and tomato leaf, both. I get really underripe, like, it's like the cherry tomatoes you get from who knows where in December. They are so not ripe, they're almost inedible. Okay? So there's a really green leafy thing going on. What else? There's some thyme and basil. And then in terms of the earth and mineral, it's like forest floor, potting soil, and it's chalky. And then the oak is there, but it's very low key. It's large barrels. So it's not a major player here like the last wine. The last wine to me, by comparison, was practically all about the oak. And finally, I think there is some VA here too. It's almost like sherry vinegar. There's this lift, almost like white vinegar. Everybody taste it, please. Mm, mm, goodness. This is a very deceptive wine. Okay. So everybody, for science, okay, first of all, let's just confirm some things and then we'll get to the structure. Because the structure, all of a sudden you may be trying to figure out what this is, and then all of a sudden you put the wine in your mouth and guess what? Okay, I get what's going on. The wine turns even tartar. It's like cherry and cherry pit and cranberry skin. So it's tannic and really sour. Yeah, but it's also tannic. It's more herbal. The tomato leaf thing is stronger. I don't taste the floral so much, but the herbs, and they're kind of like pizza herbs. I get a little thyme and basil and rosemary on the palate. There's leather and sandalwood. Less earth, but it's chalkier. It's really quite chalky on the palate. And then the oak, to me, is on the finish. It kind of frames the wine. There's used oak. It softens the finish on the wine. Now we should taste for acidity. Take a sip of the wine, hold it in your mouth for at least 5 seconds, and push it to the front of your mouth. Hold the wine in the front of your mouth for about 5 seconds. I didn't have to hold for 5 seconds. I get the effect right away. Salivary glands, they're working. The acid is medium plus. It's almost high. The alcohol is not that high. You've got a red fruit, high acid type wine. The alcohol is not going to be high. So the climate is going to be temperate. However, you do have tannin, a surprising amount of tannin. And then maybe you notice that my being strict and making you hold the wine in front of your mouth, this wine's got a lot of grape tannin. Yeah. I feel it on the enamel of my teeth. Yep. All right. I think the finish is medium plus and complexity is medium. This wine is really young. Not showing evolution in the color. Here are your choices. Sangiovese blend, Syrah blend, Nebbiolo, Italy, France, Australia, California for the Syrah, and some Sangiovese, Atlas Peak, and Tenori project. Wines are really quite good. Vote, and let's see what we come up with.
I am curious, is it easy or hard when Tim puts these two wines back to back? Because whenever you see repeated entities in the poll, I think there's a huge learning to compare the two.
Yeah. That needs food.
I agree with Jerry. It sounds a lot easier when Tim is telling you and you're like, okay, I'm going down a path now.
Yeah. All right. Li Ming, let's see what we have.
Okay, guys, you guys are doing really well. 3 more seconds to get across that 80%. I'm going to end the poll. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Okay. So we're at 54% of you are on Sangiovese, 4% are in Syrah, and 42% on Nebbiolo. And then let's look at the region. The region is 96% Italy, 4% France. So the question is this absolutely in Europe? And I think everybody thinks it's in Europe.
The issue here is Sangiovese or Nebbiolo. And I want you to think about the fact that Nebbiolo, when they harvest it, is usually end of October into November because they need for it to get as ripe as possible so they have color. They're always after color and the skins being phenolically ripe. In which case, Nebbiolo, more often than not, has high alcohol, high tannin, and high acid. Sangiovese, by comparison, they pick earlier. They're usually done by the end of October. Also, this is a lighter wine. Let's face it. This is not, and also the amount of oak. We didn't say there's a lot of oak on this. A wine like this is going to have noticeable oak, especially new oak. Okay. All right. So let's see where we're going.
Tim, to help the folks who pick Syrah out, how is it absolutely not Syrah?
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't have the color. It doesn't have the pepper. It doesn't have the savory. It just doesn't, and it's just not ripe enough. All right. So we're jumping on the plane. This time we're going to be where we need to go in about 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. We're going to jet across the Mediterranean and we're going to land in Florence. And then it's about 45 minutes southwest of Florence. We're in Altesino Winery, and this is in Brunello di Montalcino, but this is not their Brunello. This is the Rosso. So this is what is the vintage on this? 2024. So it's a really young wine, Rosso di Montalcino. So this is 100% Sangiovese. It's a clone called Sangiovese Rosso. There's actually Sangiovese Piccolo grown there too. This clone was isolated in the 1850s by Biondi Santi. Okay. Altesino is on the southwest side of Brunello. It's very steep, Renaissance hilltop town. And the northern slopes are very steep and they're limestone and chalk. The wines there are a little lighter and very chalky. Altesino's on the southwest, more marl in the soils along with limestone. The wines are richer. Altesino also really top flight, one of the top 25 Brunello producers for sure. To me, is a great value. It's like an estate Riesling from one of the great German producers or Côte d'Aron from one great Chateauneuf producer, right? This is declassified or young vines, declassified Brunello. And obviously doesn't have to see time in oak. But why is it not Nebbiolo? It's because it's not rich enough. The color's not evolved enough. And actually, it's not tannic enough or acidic enough, but it doesn't have enough alcohol and richness. It's also not as floral. So that would help you. And besides, if this wasn't Rosso di Montalcino, it would be a good Chianti or young Chianti Classico. It's that weight and complexity. Jerry Collins, is this a downgraded Brunello? I would say this is young vines, Jerry. It doesn't have the depth and richness that you would expect. Some people's Rosso di Montalcinos are much richer than this. I think this is declassified fruit. Yeah.
Tim, what the distributor is carrying now, how long would you drink a Rosso for?
It depends on the producer. Some producers are really rich and complex and can be aged 7 to 10 years. This is not that style. You want to drink this wine within 3 to 5 years.
And is it cut and dry that they don't use small barrels on Rossos?
No, because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
They're not charging enough money for the wine. So no, they're not going to put it in expensive oak. People using Barrique and Brunello now is a minority. In the last 10 years, they've gone the opposite direction. Now they're back to using 500 liter, either Italian barrels or Eastern European. So they're not really overtly spicy. And there's the owner, Elisabetta Angelini, and the winemaker has been there for quite a long time. This is a favorite Brunello producer, and this is spot on Sangiovese. Again, to take those 4 questions and review them real quick, not a lot of color, thinner skinned grapes. The wine doesn't have obvious new oak. It is definitely earthy and minerally. It's grape tannin and VA and tart fruit. Take me to Italy and Sangiovese. All right. Now for something completely different. Let's go on to wine number 3. Those 4 questions again consider the color of the wine. Does it have new oak, earth and mineral, and then the impact compound? So there's a lot of depth of color on this wine. It's deeply colored. It is ruby. There's some evolution at the edges, little bit of ruby garnet. So this wine is anywhere from 3 to 5 years old. The legs and tears match up to the color of the wine. The viscosity is high. So I'm going to expect high alcohol here and ripeness. And let's go ahead and smell it. So yeah, the fruit is really ripe. I'll start with red fruit. It's like really ripe strawberries, red plums, ripe and jammy. I got a whiff of alcohol in the nose immediately. I got heat. There's a little bit of blueberries, boysenberry jam. And then black fruit, dark plums, dark cherries, ripe and overripe. Yeah, it's really ripe. And the alcohol every time I smell the wine. Non-fruit now. Lavender. There's black pepper. There's all sorts of savory herbs. There's olives. What else? It's like almost Provençal herbs. Okay. thyme, rosemary. There's verbena. There's bay laurel. What else? Yeah, I mean, there's mushroom. There's leather. There's turned soil. A little bit of dusty mineral, but it's mostly earth. There is some oak here, but it's not. It's either large cooperage or it's used. There's kind of a smoky, toasty, walnutty thing going on. Okay. But more than anything, I got really ripe fruit. It is earthy though, and it's peppery and it's herbal. Okay. All right. Let's taste it. Mm, my goodness. First of all, I got a shout out to Mimi. Hi, Mimi. I recognize you. You were at my first table. Yeah. She was at the Denver tasting class on Wednesday. And she says, I targeted Tempranillo and Sangiovese and solved it. Fantastic. All right, everybody. This is not a shy wine. This is rich, powerful, more than a little tannic. It is peppery. It is savory, earthy, and ripe. It's more tart red fruit, but there's a lot of dark fruit bordering on pruny. It's very peppery, black pepper on the finish, and then savory herbs, almost bitter herbs, but earthy, more mineral. There's some oak. Okay. So everybody, you can swim in this wine. Excellent. All right, everybody, do the same thing. Take a sip. This is for structure. Hold the wine in your mouth for at least 5 seconds, and we'll check it out. Okay. So the first thing, well, a couple of things. One, if I inhale, I feel heat right down here. The alcohol's high. But also, surprisingly, there's acidity, right? B plus acid. And remember what I said, you would suspect the wine with this kind of alcohol would be acidulated. Here, I'm not so sure. Okay. When we give the conclusion, I'll tell you why. The tannin is medium plus. It's a mix of grape and the oak tannin. There's tannin all over the mouth. Yeah. But it's not really pronounced. It's kind of a grainy tannin. More than anything to me, it means that the wine, it's really ripe, but it's young. Okay. And its finish is long. It's powerful. It's complex and really interesting wine. Okay. So Leeming has the pull up. Here are your choices for grape variety. You've got Grenache blend, you've got Pinot Noir, and you've got Gamay. Okay. All right. So region, you could be in France, all three of those. With Spain, you could be in Spain with Garnacha, right? Grenache is a Spanish grape. And then you could be in California or New Zealand for all three because they make them.
So Tim, I think they're in the chat. There's definitely a lot of love for this wine. There's a popularity.
Well, this is your Friday high impact wine.
I hope you guys understand the value of doing this blind. A lot of times I get consumers nervous about blind tasting, but when you don't know the price, when you don't know the grape, when you don't know the region, and you're just going with what you like, I think that's a really cool factor. And I hope folks feel that way as you're filling out this poll.
Okay, let's see what we have.
I am going to give you guys 3 more seconds because we still haven't crossed the 80% participation. It's anonymous. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Here's what we have. Sharing the results, we're at 100%. Nobody thinks it's a Pinot. Everybody went Grenache.
My choices for the other two grapes, not great. This would be Pinot Noir or Gamay on steroids, right? Grenache, and most people in France, some people in Spain.
Yeah.
People in California, way too earthy for any California wine. Way too earthy. Spain, not a bad call. All right, let's see what we have. We got to go back to Florence, jump on the plane. We've got another short flight because we're going to go back to France. Go back to the Southern Rhone to Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
I hope as you guys are blind tasting, you don't try to make any assumptions about it's MTW. They must have 3 in Europe already, so everything else is going to be not Europe. There are no rules like this when we make selections. Just watch.
So this is Château de Saint-Côme in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. The real traditional producer, they use at least 10 to 12 different grape varieties. This is a blend. And that's important because it explains the range of different kinds of fruit, but it also explains how you can have such a wine that has 15% alcohol, but it has elevated acidity because some of the grapes in there are really high acid red grapes. This is a 2023 vintage, which was a hot vintage for the Southern Rhone, and it was already hot. It was really hot. So it was a warm vintage. Michelle's asking, does this wine undergo any carbonic maceration? Michelle, no. Michelle, it's just this fruit this ripe. I don't think they put through carbonic, and you would know it would smell like Beaujolais Village. So there would be the bananas and fruit punch and fruit leather thing. And that's not here. Yeah. The blend explains the color. Yeah, Bob, you're exactly right, because Grenache is a thinner skinned grape and it usually is red and it doesn't have this depth of color. This wine needs time. And there's the chateau. Originally, this property dates to the 15th century. And the Barreau family, and we'll show you the winemaker in just a second, they have owned the estate for over 100 years. Louis is the current winemaker, and they make other wines in the Southern Rhone as well. Their Côte du Rhône is outstanding. So I looked for it. I've used it on wine lists too. It's such a good value.
When we did Madeline's Kid, not this last one, but the one before, we used their Côte du Rhône, and that showed really well.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. And now wine number 4 is something completely different. All right, everybody, let's start the questions. Take a look at the color. Is there something about it that tips us off? Does the wine have new oak? Is there earth and mineral? And then what are the impact compounds? Okay. So taking a look at the wine, the thing about this wine is it's ruby purple. It's got purple in the color. This is the first wine we've had. The Rioja was garnet, right? And the next 2 wines were ruby red, a medium ruby red, and then a deep opaque ruby red. This is ruby purple, and even the edge is thinner, and it's like fuchsia, magenta, right? That could be important. The tears legs, etc. Unlike the last wine, they're coming down pretty quick. So I'd say it's like medium plus in the viscosity, and there's some tearing, some staining. And with this kind of color, you would expect it. Everybody, why don't you smell it, please? My goodness. This wine kind of greets you full on and tells you what it is. First of all, the fruit is a mix. There is some red fruit. It's mostly dark, but I'll start with red fruit. There's some tart like cherry and raspberry type fruit, and it's fresh and tart. And then there's black fruit. There's black cherry, blackberry, 2 berries that have acidity. So they are ripe and tart and fresh, very fresh. Compared to the Rioja, this is all about freshness and ripe, vibrant fruit as opposed to age and oxidation of oak. There's also a little blue fruit in here too. There's a little blueberry. Okay. Once you get beyond that, the main event of the wine besides the fruit is the non-fruit. There is white pepper, there is savory herbs, and there's lavender, there's rose, there's dark leafy greens like arugula, there's mushrooms, there's tea, there's herbs, and there's savory, something like soy sauce, and there's both earth and mineral here. Mostly earth. It's like mushrooms, brown mushrooms and earth. There is a little chalky, dusty quality to it that's probably going to be stronger in the nose. The oak is low key. It's a probably larger cooperage, most of which is used. We'll be able to tell on the palate. Okay? So please taste it. So I just want to point out, it's interesting to me, the palate is a disconnect from what the wine looks like and smells like. It's deeply colored. It's got a ton of fruit. It's got even more non-fruit. It's peppery, savory. And then on the palate, it is full, but then it's acidic. It finishes dry with acid. There's more used oak on the finished. Its texture is gritty, but it's far more acidic than I thought it would be. The tannins are medium plus, but again, all the fruit turns tartar. The red fruit is tartar. There's the sour cherry, the raspberry stuff, the blackberry, black raspberry, it's tart and fresh. The blue fruit, but it's sour. And then there's white pepper. It's herbal. A little bit of the savory, but it's mostly herbal. It's almost like tea and basil. And then it's earthy, but a little bit more minerally on the palate. And the oak makes its presence as texture and smoke and toast on the finish. Let's taste it again for structure. And the wine's quite dry, which is crazy considering how fruity it is. It really finishes dry. That's the acid and the tannin working together. Alcohol is medium plus. Acid is medium plus, and actually acid's a little higher. Long complexity, and it's a young wine. is high for a young wine. So this wine's only going to get better in the cellar. Fill it out. We've got Syrah or blend, Gamay, Merlot blend, or other. Your region's choices are France, Italy. Remember, they make Merlot and Syrah in Italy as well, especially in Tuscany. Make really good wines from both grapes. California or Australia for all three of them. And then if you don't think it's any of those, you can vote for other. Amanda says, yeah, there's some VA. I would agree. Not as strong on this one as compared to wine one, but it's definitely there. Good call. Okay. Everybody vote.
All right, we're going to give them a little bit more time. I think you would have made it even more difficult if you threw in some of the previous varieties. I can see that you're trying to make it easy hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thinking.
We'll talk more about it when we reveal, but one question that I have is why you chose this progression. Because we went with two kind of younger wines, a 24 vintage, a 23 vintage, after a 18 vintage. And when we reveal this wine, I'd be curious to understand your thinking about progression, how you decided this thinking.
Sure.
All right. So we are.
There was a method to the madness.
Okay, we're at 75%, guys. Help us get over the hump. You have a 33% chance of getting it right. It's one of those answers there for sure. Bob says, I had olive asparagus in the beginning, but it disappeared. And Amanda says there's a big disconnect on this wine between smelling and tasting.
Yes. And we'll talk about both of those things.
Okay.
So, Leanna Reynolds, it's good because once we reveal the wine, this is a really good example of it.
Okay, so I'm going to end a poll. We didn't cross. We're at 75%. I think people were stumped. So I'm going to share the results.
We're not even going to get in the plane. We're going to get in the car.
Yeah.
And we're going to drive for about 90 minutes.
Would we really do this, Tim? Would we really do two wines as neighbors in France? Let's see.
I've got it before, Lee Man.
64% were on Syrah, 12% on Gamay, and 24% on Merlot. 52% in France, 48% in the New World. California, 12%, 36% Australia. Maybe we should address the region thing.
Everybody, I talked about earth and mineral together, and they're both there. There's a lot of fruit here. But I want everyone who's in the New World with this wine, there's a lot of fruit here, but there's a lot of earth and mineral. And how many wines from California or South America or Australia do you know where there's such a disconnect between the nose and the palate, which is what Liana and Amanda are talking about? All of a sudden, you're expecting a lot more on the palate, and instead, it's really dry and it's acidic, okay? And along with the earth and mineral, that's Europe. That's absolutely Europe. In terms of, we'll get to this in a second, but Gamay, I would expect a carbonic maceration and stem inclusion, lighter color, not the pepper, not the savory herb stuff. And that was the other. Merlot would be a richer wine with more pyrazines and probably oak, noticeable new oak. Okay, so actually, yeah, we're going to hop in the car and follow the Rhone River up about 90 minutes because the northern Rhone and the southern Rhone are literally that close together. And we're going to be in Crozes-Hermitage. This is Etienne Guigal. This is the most famous name in Rhone wines. They produce wines from all the most important northern and southern Rhone appellations. So this is 2020 Crozes-Hermitage. This is textbook Northern Rhone Syrah to me. It's got the pepper, it's got the savory herb, it's got the soy. It's really quite fruity. 2020, fairly warm vintage, but Syrah doesn't bud or ripen evenly. And so this has really ripe fruit and really tart fruit in the same wine. It's the pepper and all the savory herbs. To me, what makes a Northern Rhone Syrah is the acid is elevated and the tannin, and you expect more fruit on the palate, and it's not there. It's earthy instead. Alyssa, I don't think that Guigal uses natural yeast. To my knowledge, I'd have to check on that. I'm not sure if they use native yeast or not, because they make a lot of wine. Mm-hmm. So Leon is saying the mineral I got, but the earth not so much. It's both there. The fruit is masking up. Yeah, you have to pay attention with this much fruit. You expect to get fruit at the beginning of your experience of the palate. The question is what happens after the fruit? And after the fruit initially goes away, you're left with earth and mineral, and it's really quite strong. And then Tarbos says, I thought this was a Barossa Shiraz. So Thomas, Barossa Shiraz, higher alcohol, even riper fruit, no earth and mineral, or very little, and more oak. Josh Ginsburg, Josh, I think this is white pepper versus black. For me, I have to pull my nose out of the glass a little bit. That's where I find it.
Do you get it on the end? I feel like when I taste, I'm getting it on the end.
I get it on the glass and on the finish. They just got this whiff of white pepper.
Does white pepper or black pepper mean anything different for Rotondun?
I get black pepper on wines. I get black pepper out of the Chateauneuf de Pop. Riper fruit, I get black pepper. And then where the fruit is not maybe so ripe, I get white pepper. And I get more floral too.
We have about a case and a half left of this wine. If you're interested in getting the full 750 bottle, again, this is our experiment to sell through some 750. For this particular kit, we've picked this Gigal since it's such a benchmark if you're interested in getting it. In the meantime, Tim, I have a question between wine number 4 and wine number 3, since we have a little bit of time. One is a Southern Rhone and the other is a Northern Rhone. Would you say, are these two exemplifying what is the difference between North and Southern Rhone?
Yeah, it's funny. These two places are not that far apart, but climatically and the terrain, they're different worlds. Crozes Hermitage, it's in the Northern Rhone, and it's a valley, steep hills coming up from the river. Then once you get to the town of Vienne and it goes south, you're really close to Avignon. It opens up. It's an ancient delta riverbed, and it's Mediterranean climate. It starts to get hot, and you've got river stones. Instead of single varieties planted, you have field blends. A lot of Grenache planted there, but a lot of field blends. And the vines, trellising, everything looks different. And it smells different, and it's hotter, you know?
Tim, I thought Bob's suggestion is right, and I encourage folks to have these two side by side. If you can answer my question, because as Bob brings this up, there was the 2018 Baronia that has that garnet tinge to it. And we have a 2020 Crozes Hermitage here that is still holding its color. So why did you pick this progression, and any comment about the colors of the Crozes Hermitage, even though it's a 20, it's almost 6 years old?
Okay, a couple of thoughts. The Rioja could have been either wine 1 or wine 6. I've thought about starting off because I wanted to benchmark oxidation and American oak and a thinner skin grape. And I could have put it last, but it would have come after the Chateauneuf du Pape with higher alcohol. And I thought the wine would have showed better before the richer wines. That's why. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And the Crozes Hermitage is only 2 years younger, but it doesn't spend very long in oak, not even a year. And Syrah tends to hold its color. That's why. And there is Egal.
Has a question.
What's that?
Sorry. Melissa has a question. Can you answer which variety gives Grenache acidity from Chateauneuf du Pape?
Probably Mourvedre. Mourvedre and Senso, but Mourvedre has acid, color, really deep color. It has tannin and pepper, and it's savory.
Jerry Collins has
pot roasted at glass one time.
That's a great analogy. Jerry's got a question about field blends. Does it mean that the plot has mixed varieties with no effort to separate the varieties?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that's true of all over Europe. But Jerry, even the first vineyards that were planted in California in the mid-19th century by Italian immigrants, they're field blends too. Yeah.
Does this Syrah have a meat and gamey characteristic?
This one, not so much mimi, but I mentioned soy sauce on the nose. I didn't get it so much on the palate, but I definitely got soy sauce in that.
Definitely in the nose.
Resiny, rich, gamey type things. If Madeline's listening, I hope she is. She calls it the Jimmy Dean factor.
Yeah. Got Madeline's Jimmy Dean factor definitely on the nose. It's got that umami-ness. Liana has a question about circling back to the Grenache. Absolutely. Why wouldn't it be a Priorat?
Liana, to me, Priorats are not as fruity as this wine. This wine's got a ton of fruit. Priorats to me are earthier and more tannic than this wine. And there's Philippe Guigal, the current winemaker. Guigal has been around for hundreds of years and always solid wines. So let's take wine 5. All right, let's check out the color. Noting the color and asking, is there anything about it that might lead us to thinner, thicker skinned grapes? Does the wine have new oak? Does the wine have obvious earth and mineral? green chili, are there impact compounds that can help me identify the wine? Amanda's pointing to one already. I'm going to say this color is a deep ruby. It's fairly young because the rim or edge is kind of pink purple. The tears happen pretty quickly and they're thin, they're moving quickly. So the alcohol in this, unlike wine 3, is not high. It's probably in the medium range somewhere. Now for the nose. This is not a shy example of what this wine is. I would say the fruit here is red and dark. It's kind of a smattering of both. It's youthful and tart and ripe. I've got red raspberry, sour cherry, red plum, fresh, tart, and ripe, more tart than ripe. Then I've got blackberry, black cherry, maybe a little black currant. Again, tart, fresh, and ripe, leaning towards tart. And then everything else. There's a lot of everything else. There is some really pretty violet, almost like violet candy. And then this tsunami of green. There is bell pepper, even green peppercorn. There's jalapeno, grass. Amanda says green chili from here in New Mexico, even fresh basil and chives. Underneath that, there's earth, mushroom, and turned soil. But there's also a chalkiness. It's like chalk dust from a chalkboard. The oak here is low key. There's some graphite. There's some toast, smoke, very low spice. So the oak aging here is used, or the barrels are large. All right, let's taste it. For those of you that thought there was a disconnect in the previous wine, there's even more of a disconnect on this one. It's medium bodied. The fruit really turns sour. Even the dark fruit is tart. It's like tart cherries, cherry pits, cranberries, pomegranate would be a good descriptor. The green savory thing is really strong. It is like dried bell peppers, it's jalapenos, it's grass. Yeah, the green chili thing, but also it's earthy. It's really surprisingly earthy and especially chalky. The oak here is used and it's just on the finish, and there's really a minor player. Taste it again. I wouldn't be surprised if the wine is even more sour, more chalky, more stemmy, more green. Keep it in your mouth for 5 seconds and then spit it out. Then you'll be checking out the acid. You spit it out, you say, oh, inhale the alcohol, and then how much tannin and what kind of tannin. As I go through the structure, first of all, the wine is bone dry. The acid is medium plus. The tannins are medium plus, but I want you to know there's just a green stemmy thing going on. And that goes along with all the green elements already in the wine. I'll explain why when we get to it. The alcohol is medium here at best. Your choices are Cabernet Franc blend, Merlot blend, Malbec blend. Notice 3 Cabernet family grapes. Think about that. And where could it be from? Could be France, could be Italy, could be California, could be Argentina. This wine needs food.
It does, but it's
Yeah.
distinctive when you take this wine number 5 and compare it to any of the 4 before. I think that's one of the beauties of tasting 6 wines at a time, is that comparison is what's going to teach you to isolate some of the elements that are difficult.
Yeah, John says collard greens. That's not a bad call.
That's a great call. I like that. It's collard greens with a little pepper. It's got that tinge. It's the Amanda call of chili too.
Yeah, well, that's green chili here in New Mexico. That's a special reference for us. Yeah, it is. It's really strong green flavor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without
I
the
agree with
spice.
Josh. It's a beautiful wine.
Yeah.
We're still at 78%. I'm going to end the poll. Thank you for pushing it over. Here are the results. 92% on Cabernet Franc, 8% on Malbec, and we have on region 72% on France, 4% on Italy, 8% on California, and 16% on Argentina. So it's a good 24%. A quarter of folks were going with outside Europe. Let's debunk that
Yeah.
for now.
Yeah, I would just say this is like the Crozes Hermitage. And you think about it, I'm hard pressed to come up, but there are exceptions, of course. I'm thinking all these places for wine in the New World, they make red wine with a lot of fruit. Do those places make wine that's this acidic, this bone dry? And the answer is no. There's really not. And also earthy. This wine is profoundly earthy. And it's also profoundly green and vegetal more than anything. So we could take a high-speed train and we could be in this place from the Northern Rhone in about 2.5 hours, right? So we are in Chinon. This is in the Loire Valley. And this is Cabernet Franc. This is one of the paradigms for Cabernet Franc wines. So Chinon, chalk soils, sand soils, 2023 vintage. It's really quite young. It's 100% Cabernet Franc, a small producer, Beatrice and Pascal Lambert, known for the Chinon. They also make exceptional Chenin Blanc too. You'd expect that because that's where Vouvray is too, and the Turin. This is textbook Chinon to me. The stemmy thing is also, take a look at the color, because even the rim is like pink fuchsia. It's like purple pink. So there's fermentation going on here, but also some stem tannin. Okay. That would explain that. But also, that is a minor player in the context of so much pyrazines. It's extreme pyrazine. Not everybody's cup of tea. And even then, look at the soil in the middle. You can see it's white. So it's chalk. And there's Beatrice and Pascal and Antoine, the son, who's the current winemaker, and they bought this estate, I think, in the 80s, 1987. And they own about 30 acres and planted 2 Cabernet Franc and 2 Chenin Blanc. And this is a perfect example, textbook, definitely a testable example of Chinon and Cabernet Franc.
Tim just went 3 France in a row. There's no accounting for
Just
where
was
he's going to
shocking.
go next.
Yeah, trust me, that was not by design. I just wanted to show you've got 2 examples of Rhone wines, but I wanted to put Northern and Southern next to each other to show you ripeness and alcohol of Grenache blend versus a Northern Rhone Syrah, which is more lifted, has white pepper and more tart fruit. Those 2 next to each other, and then totally different impact compound cap, and that's pyrazines. Finally, wine 6. Okay. Same questions. Pay attention to the color. Does it tell you anything? Lighter, deeper color, or the color itself? Does the wine have noticeable new oak? The last one didn't. In fact, the last 2 didn't. Does the wine have obvious earth and mineral or not? And what are the impact compounds that help me identify the wine? So here we go. Let's take a look at the color. So this has the deepest color out of all 6 wines. I would call this color purple with ruby. And the rim is very narrow and it's like a lighter purple. Okay, purple. Which grape varieties? And then the legs and tears. Okay, they're pretty slow, but the glass, there's a lot of staining of the tears. Thicker skin grape, warmer climate. Okay? All right, why don't you smell it, please? Okay. All right. It's a very curious comparison to the last couple of wines. There's a lot of fruit. So I would say there is really ripe, like red cherries and red plums that are red and fresh. There's also black fruit, black cherries, black plums, black berries, ripe, fresh once again. It's very young. And then there's even some blueberry, ripe blueberries. Okay? And then beyond that, above the glass, it smells like violets. Down further in the glass, it is herbal. It's just slightly herbal. So there's some green type herbs, salad greens, leafy greens. There is some sage, some tea leaf, some verbena. If you compare it to the Chinon that we just had, it is very mannered and polite. What it does have is some oak. There's medium, both new and used oak here. There's vanilla, there's smoke, there's toast, baking spices. What there isn't very much of is earthiness. There's a dusty, turn dust quality. And for me, no minerality whatsoever. And if you're not sure, you can go back to either of the previous 2 wines and get a good A-B comparison with wine 6. We've got a lot of fruit. We've got some really pretty floral notes. We've got some light green herbal things, and we've got oak. Taste it, please. Unlike the previous 2 wines, the fruit hangs around on the palate. Gets a little tartar, I'm getting alcohol, right? Heat. The fruit here, it tartans up a little bit. It's still mostly dark. This is black fruit and blue fruit. It's like really bright blueberries. It's black cherries, black plums, some tart, redder fruit like red plum and red cherry. I can't taste the floral. The earthiness is not there much at all. There's that green factor, tea and chives, things like that. There's quite a bit of oak. I would say French oak because it's not overtly spicy. Let's taste for structure. Okay. The alcohol is high. Notice the acidity is just above medium. It's medium, between medium and medium plus. It's not elevated at all. And the tannins are medium plus, and man, a lot of oak tannins in the back. In fact, notice how the oak really dries out the finish. Like the salivary glands are making your mouth water, only to have the oak tannins like dry it out. And the finish is long, and the finish at this point, this wine seems to be young, and so a lot of fruit and oak, and the oak needs to be resolved, or you need to have this with roast beast of some kind, like beef or lamb. Yeah. Okay. So there is our poll. Everybody, your choices for grape variety are Malbec blend, Tannat blend, Aglianico. Okay. And the region could be Italy for Aglianico. It could be France for Malbec or Tannat, and Argentina for Malbec, California for Malbec or Tannat. Okay. Josh says basket of fruit from a warm climate. It is delicious.
Tim, was this the wine you were talking about having grape and oak tannins?
No, that was the Rosso di Montalcino. We can go back to it. Grape tannins in the front of the mouth. So if you take a sip and push the wine to the front of your mouth and keep it there, there's some grape tannin. But most of the tannins are oak tannins here, and even tastes smoky and toasty.
Grape tannins are in the front of the mouth and oak tannins are in the back?
Yeah, generally that's true.
Great.
And then when we're finished with this wine, we'll go back and taste the Rosso di Montalcino again.
Great. And for those of you who don't remember, it's wine number 2.
number
Okay,
2.
we are at 78%. 3 seconds to go, guys. 3, 2, 1.
Oddly enough, if you put those 3 choices, they would all look the same or very close to the same. They would have very close to the same color. So that's kind of a cruel thing to do.
All right, 77% of folks are on Malbec, 12% on Tannat, and another 12% on Aglianico. Sometimes people pick the ones that they're least familiar with, something new. In terms of regions, we have Argentina at 80%, California at 4%, France at 4%, and Italy at 12%. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, let's take Campania, Central Italy, and Campania. It's volcanic wine, red wine. The wine to me always tastes like iron filings and rust. It's powerful. It's tannic. It's also can be inky, black, ruby, purple, right? It is tannic. Not herbal, tannic, fruity, a little bit more floral than this. And without earth and mineral, Tannat, otherwise you'd be in Cahors or southwestern France, but this you'd be in Uruguay. Uruguay is where the best Tannats in the New World are made, and they can be delicious. And then finally, Malbec, it's quacking like a duck. There's a lot of black, blue, and red fruit, light herbal qualities, not so tannic, and a little bit of floral. So now we do have to get on the jet, fly overnight, long flight to the Southern Hemisphere, and we're going to go to Mendoza. Toco Vineyard is the name of the winery. It's a project with collaboration of Alejandro Sejanovic and Jess Mausbach. Those are 2 of the most respected guys in the Argentine winemaking community. This is in the Paraja Altamira Valley, one of the subregions of Mendoza. It's 4,000 feet in elevation, a little bit higher than typical. Most of the vineyards in Mendoza are at about 3,000 feet. What other varietals have blueberry, Melissa? Syrah from the New World usually has blueberry. This is textbook Malbec from Argentina. The blue, black, and red fruit, really ripe, not that tannic that you think of Cabernet. On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe about a 2. This is delicious. You can see why they eat a lot of beef and drink this wine, because it's a great match. Take a look at the price. That's a great price. Malbec from Argentina, one of the consistently best values for red wine there is. Good value proposition. Malbec from Argentina is like the baseball of red wine. No matter how they change the rules in baseball, they can't screw the game up. Malbec is identifiably itself all the time, no matter how inexpensive it is or how expensive it is. I think this is, for the money, this is a really good wine. And all the way up into the single vineyard Nicholas Catena wines, which are some of the best wines made in the New World. They're brilliant. And yet at the same time, you can buy a really good $12 to $15 retail Malbec. Yeah. And there are the owners, Alejandro and Jeff. I think just textbook Malbec from Argentina.
Tim and I are cooking up the Nix 4-part series. So some of you who purchased just the 4-part series rather than our regular subscription, we are coming up with a Nix 4-part with more themes coming from the book because there's so much to learn from this book. This is the QR code for SAT sheets. It's also going to be on the webinar page as well.